Welcome to the Fast Mode podcast series. I'm Tara Neil, and with me today is Andrew Conway, Group Director and SVP of Technology Strategy at Boldyn Networks. Boldyn is one of the largest and most established neutral host providers in the world. Andrew joins us as part of our exclusive editorial segment on Open RAN. Welcome, Andrew. Great to have you on the show.
Hi, Tara. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. Let's dive right in. How does RAN virtualization support a neutral host infrastructure model?
Okay, well, when we look at RAN virtualization, essentially that is an approach that involves separating the hardware and software components, really, of the radio access network, the RAN. And already that RAN architecture has been moving from a traditional monolithic RAN towards remote radio heads and baseband units, but this is now accelerating with virtualization. And virtualization really means that the software can be run on commercial off-the-shelf servers, predominantly hosted in data centers away from the radios. And also the radio form factors themselves shrink in size. So really that does tremendously support a neutral host model. Neutral hosting, remember, is about serving multiple mobile network operators, and they share the infrastructure. So a neutral host, such as Boldyn, typically has access to a location that's challenging to serve from a radio perspective. It can be a building, inside a building, in a high density environment like a stadium, along a series of streets in a city, or even deep underground on a transport or a transit system. And that sharing of infrastructure really minimizes duplication and cost, and provides an outcome for the mobile network operator in terms of coverage and capacity. So really, I think the RAN virtualization platforms very much support this multi-tenancy approach with multiple MNOs, and then each operator has as logical RAN instances.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you did mention about multiple tenants. So on one end, you have like multi-vendor solutions, so you're dealing with lots of vendors. And then on the other end, you have multiple tenants. So does that complicate things?
It is a complex architecture. There's no doubt about that. I think the thing about Open RAN and virtualization is that it provides flexibility in the architecture. And once you've started to build the platform from a neutral host perspective, it allows mobile network operators and communication service providers to plug into that platform. The platform itself can provide both, public cellular and also private networks. So initially it is complex, but in certain markets, for example, such as the UK, there are standards that the mobile network operators have jointly formed in order to provide a framework for operation.
I see. Okay. So, I was just thinking as you were talking that, say, for example, you onboard a new tenant and they have like really very specific requirements, maybe, for the applications that they serve or their use cases. So would Open RAN in this instance enable, due to the flexibility that it accords, enable operators to offer, whatever that their tenants want? Will that be the case?
Yeah, it will. I think, it's easy sometimes to get kind of consumed by all of the details of like technical aspects behind Open RAN and virtualization. But if we bear in mind that Open RAN principles ultimately are around kind of modularity, scalability, and interoperability, it really affords the benefits towards the MNO in terms of avoiding, single vendor lock-in. MNOs also can then integrate to the neutral host, integrate once, for example, to the Boldyn platform, and then leverage the benefits of that deployment in difficult to reach places. So once the interoperability has been kind of set up and assessed between the mobile network operator and the neutral host, that can be then replicated around the country or the region. And I think really it's all about how the mobile network operator then wants to have visibility in terms of performance and optimization of that particular RAN, and that will depend on operator by operator. Some will want to have a very detailed interaction to understand the performance of that RAN, whilst other MNOs will just be happy with kind of almost like a high level service level agreement or SLA approach, where the capability, the coverage and capacity is almost deployed then on a black box basis. So it's very much horses for courses, and I would say that operating model is evolving as we speak.
Okay. Interesting. So, when you have an open RAN architecture and then you're working with neutral hosts, does this openness help MNOs maintain greater control and visibility into their networks? And what are the benefits that MNOs might see from this architecture?
Well, I think ultimately the benefits of the architecture for the mobile network operators, I think we always have to focus on outcomes for their customers, and business outcomes. So whilst the technology and the architecture is absolutely fascinating and very important for people like me to get right, I think ultimately for the mobile network operators, it's about providing flexibility and a business model that costs in. And I think there's some real challenges in the mobile world in terms of trying to get really good in-building capacity and coverage, for example. And this is where neutral hosts can play a part, because 80% of the calls that you make on a device are typically made or received indoors, and in a lot of buildings, both old buildings and brand new modern ones, they kind of shield the device from the cellular signal. They are in essentially Faraday cages. So you do need a neutral host model that can scale so that the mobile network operator coverage can be deployed quickly and at a cost-effective point.
Okay, so so this is, I think that's one of the biggest benefits, and having this multiple vendors kind of architecture, does it also help MNOs like have a greater visibility into the networks? Like, is it more easy now for them to see what's going wrong in the network, and which particular area where there's maybe congestion and maybe where the resources are lacking and stuff? Is that something that we can foresee?
Yeah, absolutely. We can see that. I think the Open RAN and virtual architecture affords that visibility not only towards the neutral host, which can be potentially operating the RAN on the MNO's behalf, but the architecture does also allow that greater visibility, I would say. Particularly now that there seems to be a lot of development within the Open RAN space in terms of automation and AI. And really by that, what we're talking about there are advanced automation tools for network management and network performance. And ultimately, as those tools evolve, it essentially reduces human interaction and intervention. It means that those RAN networks that are deployed ultimately require less personnel to operate and optimize them, which is also a great cost benefit which can be passed on.
Wow, that's insightful. Okay, I think building on that cost element, what are the long-term financial implications of Open RAN-based neutral hosting for MNOs? I mean, compared to conventional neutral hosting.
Well, I think Open RAN is very much here now, and it's here to stay. We mobile network operators have deployed Open RAN technology in the public cellular network outdoors. The macro base stations, as we call them, that provide coverage around the country, around the regions. But now we are starting to see the uptake of Open RAN technology within building solutions, which is where Boldyn is particularly excited. I think in the past days, the previous days, the traditional monolithic RAN required investment from the mobile network operators in terms of investing in, we call them base stations, BTSs, and that actually required for the operator, a relatively high initial capital investment, initial capex investment. Going forwards, as they leverage the neutral host shared platform, that kind of initial upfront investment in monolithic BTSs reduces or eliminates, and it becomes more of a service, more of an OPEX model. So I'd say that's a significant implication, I would say, over the medium to long term. And I think something that's particularly exciting from a Boldyn perspective as well is that we see that the Open RAN solutions really do also provide commitment to sustainability goals, both for mobile network operators and for ourselves as a neutral host. And we're seeing that these open virtualized RAN solutions are, almost, 65% more power efficient than the traditional monolithic RANs, and they're also much faster to deliver. So there is also, I think, an improved time to market angle here.
I guess so. There will be a lot of indirect savings as well financially, from those gains. Okay, great. So yeah, I think we have not talked about Boldyn at this point, I think. So let's see, what role are you guys playing in the Open RAN ecosystem, and we would like to know, if you foresee high take-up or investments in Open RAN moving forward.
Okay, well, certainly, yeah. From a Boldyn perspective, Boldyn Networks, we are like a global player in the neutral host space. So we deploy shared network infrastructure around the globe, and we're seeing sort of like great interest and traction in the Open RAN movement. Let's say. Boldyn itself works in a number of individual domains. So, for example, we're heavily invested in the transit network space. So we have a number of we run long-term projects around the world in New York, in Rome, in London, here in London where I'm based. So, for example, we're rolling out a shared network on the London Underground for Transport for London, and the mobile network operators, and then plugging into that system so that they can provide 2G, 3G, 4G and 5G coverage to their customers underground and in the interconnecting tunnels. And we're also bringing that capability above ground as well onto streetscape assets within the capital. And then elsewhere, as I alluded to before, Boldyn provides neutral host services in building, to venues, particularly stadiums and entertainment venues. And again, we're starting to see traction here in terms of Open RAN. So for example, we're working quite closely with the UK government, the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, DSIT, to prove Open RAN capability in what we're terming a high density demand venue. So we have a project up in the northeast at the Stadium of Light in Sunderland, where we're providing an Open RAN based system for that stadium to really prove to the industry that Open RAN can also work in this very high density demand requirement. So I would say that we are a significant spender already, really, and we're shifting quite rapidly towards Open RAN. And as I said before as well, I think it offers great promise as well from a sustainability perspective.
Brilliant. That brings us to the end of our session. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us and for sharing your insights on neutral hosting and Open RAN and Boldyn's role in this space.
Thanks, Tara.
And to everyone tuning in, Thank you. If you want to learn more, visit www.boldyn.com and follow us for more updates and insights as we continue to uncover the latest in technology and telecommunications. See you in our next session.